I made a stupid joke to my husband, and he just looked at me like I was a waste of oxygen and left. Now he's taking time to think about things, and I'm spiraling. I honestly never expected to post because my husband, 30 meters, and I, 27F, have a great relationship. Of course, I can't say we haven't had our occasional bumps, but it's honestly been a dream come true all the way through. Our wedding was in April 2021, and we both cried like babies that day. Since then, the sailing has been smoother than soap. This afternoon, he and I came home after a little lunch outing with our newly engaged friends, Kai and Marie. It went great, but was just another outing. Nothing special, though we got some bomb pasta to take home, which I'm currently shoveling into my gobs since it's too chilly for ice cream. We live in a super tiny apartment, so he showered first while I put the leftovers in the fridge and tidied up. I went in after him, finished my shower, and put some lotion on my palm. I accidentally squeezed out too much and dabbed some away. After rubbing it on my face, I still had some left on my finger, so I did exactly what any perfectly sane person would do. On my finger, I whipped up a little smiley face with some spiky hair to create lotion, ma'am. I came out of the bathroom giggling about it and said something like, "Hey, look. It's lotion, ma'am." He didn't really react. He just looked at my hand and blinked at me. I was honestly just goofing around. So I started making a silly voice and saying random stuff, sprinkled with some inside jokes. I was blabbing for about a minute before he just up and left. Of course, I was completely oblivious as he grabbed some of his stuff, and I was still smiling, playfully asking where he was going. He has a huge truck and we just returned from a trip, so he had enough packed to last weeks. It didn't really dawn on me that he was leaving until he drove away. I honestly feel like Boo Boo the fool for making such a stupid joke and then letting him leave just like that. I texted him a few times, and he just said that he's thinking about things and that he's at his brother Tyler's place. I've been texting him non-stop, but he hasn't responded or even read any of my messages. He also sleeps really early, so I doubt I can get in contact with him anytime soon. His brother isn't responding either. So I'm just leaving my phone on the nightstand and holding my breath. I don't think it's really sunk in yet. I stared blankly at the door for, 10 minutes before I got off my tail and actually tried contacting him. I've been with this man for years, and I'm always cracking cheesy jokes. I feel stupid in my crap for making lotion man and continuing after he didn't respond instead of just shutting up and accepting that I'm unfunny. At the same time, I'm just confused. He's never reacted like this, even in our rougher patches. The worst we've done is take breaks from segs or talk a little less. Wasn't planning on getting into my segs life, but honestly, I'm just rambling at this point. I'm all for giving him space, but I can't say I'm not hurt that he just left. And the process of divorce is just so I don't even want to think about it anymore. Was making lotion man as big of a mistake as I think it was? Any advice on getting him back home? Thanks, Reddit. Update 5 days later. Hey, Reddit. Again, I posted here earlier about how my husband left after I told him a dumb joke. I followed the advice I received and kept my distance. You all really had me reflecting on how much of my relationship was the butterflies and kittens I thought it was. I still firmly believe that everything was absolutely perfect before this happened, but oh well, I have my opinions. So you guys were right about some things and wrong about others. For those of you who said the lotion thing had nothing to do with it, you were, well, kinda wrong. But for those who said something happened during the lunch outing, you were right on the money. My husband came back the other day. He apologized and said he was ready to talk. I obliged. I tried my best not to be all over him, but quite frankly, I miss this man so damn much. He's my husband after all. He told me the following. I mentioned previously that we went out with our two newlywed friends, Kai, 30 meters, and Marie, 29F. We did have some quality time with all four of us, but often, one or more people were missing from the table, considering it was a fusion buffet and the food was amazing. Apparently, at some point, my husband and Marie grabbed some food together, or maybe it was before we left since I know I was talking to just Kai for a while before they appeared and we got to the car. Whatever it was, they were alone together. Marie, the fiancée, told my husband that when Kai proposed, she realized she was in love with him, my husband. Even so, she accepted Kai's proposal and tried to put her feelings to rest by organizing a lunch outing. But apparently, she was charmed or some BS because she asked him to run away with her or something. I don't know, but she wanted him to leave me and be with her. Now, Marie is honestly gorgeous, which I hate to admit because I'm so pissed off at her. She's the typical blonde, blue-eyed, skinny pageant girl who looks kind of like Emma Watson. I'm not. My husband gently turned her down and wished her all the best, but he says she was on his mind for a while. We were all college friends, so we know each other very well. And when I showed him Lotion Man, everything basically exploded inside him. I had a hair towel on, was wearing some crappy old clothes, and was giggling over something stupid. Apparently, my immaturity ticked him off compared to however the hell Marie was. He got sudden cold feet about our relationship and left for his brother's place. Eventually, he came back and said he loved me all over again. I was frozen in shock. I asked him some questions before telling him to sleep on the couch, at least for that night. He did, but it didn't help me sleep. I can't believe he was seriously considering throwing away our entire relationship for a crush. The more I think about it, the less I can look him in the eye. We went to Thanksgiving lunch together with some of his family and some close friends, and we spent last night together. So I think he believes he's in the clear. I can't lie. I'm considering just forgiving and forgetting. He comes home from work in about 6 hours, and I don't know what to do next. I have today off. I'm a teacher, so I'm considering, contacting Kai and telling him what his fiancée is up to. My husband begged me not to, as Marie was apparently making a spontaneous mistake. B. Contacting Marie and chewing her out for trying to mess up my relationship or having a civil conversation, less tempting, but whatever. C. Contacting Tyler, his brother, and asking if my husband left the house at any point. Tyler's house is very close to Marie's place, and I'm really worried about that, though I doubt I'll get anything out of him. Or D. All of the above. Any advice or well wishes, because I'm not in a great place right now, would be appreciated. If I do end up dating, it'll probably be on my profile since I understand this subreddit has a one update policy, and I don't want to post without a definite outlook on the future. I think I've mentioned before that legal stuff scares the shit out of me, so divorce will be tough, but it seems likely. I wish I could just forget it all. Thanks, Reddit. Second update 2 days later. Hey, Reddit. First of all, I'd like to thank you so much for the overwhelming support and sweet messages. I honestly was not expecting this. A lot of you also took the time to message me, and I had some great conversations with fellow Redditors. I'm honestly so flattered by how freaking sweet so many of you are. I wish I could have replied to every single one of your comments. I uploaded every one of them though. A lot of you had some really interesting theories, lol, and surprisingly, most of them were somewhat right. The majority ruled that I should confront all three, Kai, Marie, my husband, and Tyler, not necessarily in that order. So I had to get smart with it since many of you warned me that any one of them could twist the story if they knew there was outside influence. Before I begin, yes, the full story is wacky and honestly doesn't make much sense. I'm piecing it together through context clues, and I still have some unanswered questions. Plus, none of the people relaying this story are in a good headspace. So do you. It might just seem like a ton of garbled nonsense. I'm just hoping it gets across since I know a lot of people wanted closure on this. When my husband came home, we had a conversation. He essentially stuck to the same story and told me he was open to my marriage counseling suggestion. I gave him a big hug and did the laundry. We usually split the laundry, and I had been giving him a light cold shoulder. So in his eyes, I indirectly forgave him. We haven't really set boundaries with our phones. We know each other's passwords and everything, but he would definitely get suspicious if I was just scrolling through his. So instead, I agreed to meet up with Kai first. Many of you were concerned that he would tell Marie and everything would implode, but Kai is a big gym nut, and I've been wanting to go recently. So I casually used that as an excuse. He agreed. The next morning, I met with Kai. I sat down with him and told him everything I knew. Yes. I cried like a baby. At first, Kai was rigid and tried to kindly poke holes in what I was saying with a few gotcha questions before he too broke down. Marie hadn't told him a word. That was a big red flag on its own. I then went to Marie with Kai. A few Redditors told me to be as discreet as possible. So, as one suggestion said, I just blurted out, "I know everything." She played dumb at first, but eventually broke. You all were right. Marie's excuse about trying to settle her crush was BS. My husband was the one who approached her. She told me he had asked her if before she sealed things with Kai, she wanted to have a night with him and another woman. Here's the kicker. Marie said yes. But wait, I hate to say it, but that's not all. Apparently, Marie had been cheating on Kai for a while with both men and women, and my husband had also been cheating frequently. They covered for each other and occasionally met up. At the last moment, Marie declined because she wanted to be loyal to Kai now that they were engaged, as if she hadn't been cheating for the majority of the relationship. My husband got pissed off for a while before saying he was just locked in his apartment now. "Cue me showing him the lotion, ma'am?" He snapped and stormed out. Kai and Marie started arguing, both in tears, red in the face. I told them I was sorry for butting into their relationship and that I would handle my husband myself. I found Tyler before sunset. He told me, yes, his brother had stopped by, but only around 11 p.m. Tyler had left at around 8, so those 3 hours were unaccounted for. Tyler said my husband was angry and didn't tell him anything. I then gave him some context, just the lotion man, and he suggested that maybe my husband had just been driving around for a while. That doesn't sound like him, but I'm willing to look into it since my future was already looking pretty effing bleak. I went home. I Googled something on my husband's phone, but really, I was just checking if anyone had contacted him. Nothing, thankfully. I would have gone deeper, but that would have to wait. Instead, I tried to keep him busy for the rest of the day. Remember how I said he sleeps really early? Well, that worked in my favor. That night while he was snoring his tail off, I took his phone. I ran into a 1,000,000 dead ends. I knew I was missing something, but I just couldn't find it. Finally, I opened his hidden photos. Kaboom! His story exploded to pieces. What did I find? A crap ton of nudes. All of them the same girl. It wasn't me, shocker. But not Marie either. I didn't recognize her. Let's call her Allison, since my second-grade best friend who turned out to be a snake was named Allison. Not the same person, just so I have a name to refer to her by since I don't actually know her real name. She's absolutely gorgeous, red hair, hourglass figure, you name it. I was obviously broken. I traced her back to a contact. I felt sick. There it was, an affair. He had been contacting her since February, days before I surprised him with a Valentine's gift I had spent my paychecks on, thinking I was the luckiest woman alive. It effing sucks. I couldn't even read more, but I toughed through it. Then I hit it. November 3rd, 2 days after the last nude, she was pissed off. She had found out he was married all along. She had been in love with him. I would feel bad for her, but she didn't even bother trying to contact me out of love. Ergo, my genius husband came up with a brilliant idea. He told Allison that he'd bring his wife to a hotel to show that she didn't care about the affair. Sound familiar? So when Marie canceled, he had nothing left to do. He became whiny and begged Allison to come. He told her there had been an inconvenience and that they'd meet up another day. Then the lotion man, then he got pissed off at me and left. I don't know what he did after that, but whatever it was, he wasn't with either of them. Then he went to Tyler's place, slept it off and came back afterward. I'll spare you the details, but I couldn't even pretend to like him anymore after that. The next morning, I brought Kai and Marie over. My husband started blubbering and trying to deny everything before eventually admitting he was into redheads. Marie is actually strawberry blonde. Allison is very ginger, and that it was the one desire I couldn't fulfill. Even I could see past his BS about loving only me and how being with Allison and Marie only made him love me more. I just said screw it and packed my stuff. He got more desperate, but even I, the girl who had been infatuated with him, knew it was over. He technically owns the apartment, so I had to leave. Now I'm staying with Kai. He's as hurt as I am. We cried and hugged for a while, ranting about God knows what, just trying to get ourselves together, TBH. He tried to lighten the mood by making lunch. It was really nice. He's a wonderful cook. I showed him the other 2 posts and he got a kick out of some of your comments. I still have a lot to go through, but writing this all down has been really therapeutic. Reddit, thank you again from me and Kai. Third update, 2 years, 2 months later. It's that time of year again, if you couldn't tell. Check in on your teacher pals if you have any. Hello, Reddit. It's been a while, and I finally hopped back onto this account, and wow. I honestly don't even know where to start. Seeing so much support even today, well wishes into the new year, it's all really amazing. I love the internet so much, especially you, Reddit. You guys were there for me during the toughest times in my life. I saw dozens of messages asking for updates, checking if I'm doing alright, even people sharing their own stories of nearly identical things happening to them. And now it's been about 2 years. Feels like for freaking ever ago, and at the same time, it all feels like it happened yesterday. Okay. Now actually getting to it, there's a lot to go through here. I guess I ought to get the bad news out of the way first. Kai and I had a pretty nasty fallout. I don't want to dive into the nitty-gritty details. This would be, like, 30 pages long if I did, but to sum it all up in a gift wrap, we were roommates, pretty involved in each other's business, yada yada. Basically, every time I went to the store, he knew. Every time he came home from work, I knew. All of our whereabouts were always mentally noted just because of our proximity, paired with the way we divvied up our house chores and whatnot. At some point, Kai told me he was going on a date with a girl. Yay. Good for him. In my case, this was just a few months after D-Day, and I was still in the middle of messy divorce proceedings. Plus, I wasn't really in the headspace for another relationship, so dating wasn't even on my radar yet. Since Kai and Marie didn't have a ring on it, they were able to break it off a little more cleanly, but not perfectly, obviously. He went on the date, then another, and then it stopped. After about a week of no updates, I asked what happened out of curiosity, and he simply told me she'd ghosted him. Then a week later, on a totally random evening, he dropped the sparkly rainbow glitter bomb on me. He had tried to see Marie again. I know. Pretty crazy behavior, right? Well, he was telling me this while crying and blubbering like a baby on his couch, and I couldn't help but feel bad for him. The road to recovery from a blown-up relationship is rough. He told me those dates had helped him realize it was over. Like, over. He described it as, though I'm probably mincing words here, when he first met Marie, she had this sweet girl next door customer service facade. As he got to know her better, he ended up uncovering this fun-loving, wild-spirited girl underneath the girl he says he fell in love with. But when he met up with her again that month, she was right back to her factory settings, which hurt him deep down because it felt like he'd started at square one all over again. He not only ghosted her after 2 dates, but blocked her everywhere. It was a bit of a tough decision for me. It's quite close to home, you know, but I decided to brush it off and console him instead of dwelling on it. Things were clear for another few months after that. In that time, Kai turned me into a total gym girl. Reading my last posts, it's so funny how iffy I was about the gym. Anyway, after those few halcyon months, Kai broke the news to me again that he was going on another date, this time with a friend of a mutual friend we have. Again, I was like, oh, go for it. At this time, I was still all muddled up in divorce proceedings and sulking over my crumpled marriage, so dating still wasn't on the table for me. Now, as I've mentioned before, we both kept tabs on each other just because of the way our arrangement was structured. So when Kai started leaving at 2 p.m. and coming home at 8 p.m. and his other dates with this girl had equally long time frames, if not longer, I immediately noticed. Of course, I didn't really bring it up since I assumed he was just having a really great time with her or something along those lines, but his absence on date days was noticeable. He'd even request that I run some of his smaller errands he knew he'd miss on those days just because of how long he was gone. Eventually, I was able to meet this girl, Grace, 20-something F, who was super sweet and was also a teacher. She taught elementary school kids, but still, it was a great thing for us to bond over. At this point, things seemed to be going great. Kai and Grace were adorbs, summer was passing, and everything was hunky-dory. I also just about officially divorced my ex-husband, but dang it. Those dates were just so long. Even his short meetups were at least 3 to 4 hours of him just gone. So finally, I subtly brought it up. Kai then told me that Grace mostly planned their date spots, and those spots were usually an hour or two away from here with traffic. When I asked him where Grace lived, maybe they were trying to meet in the middle. Kai responded with a plain, "Not sure." At that point, maybe I'd read too many infidelity forums or something, but alarms were going off in my head. Grace probably didn't live too far away, considering she was friends with one of our friends. And after months of dating, Kai didn't even know where she lived, whereas she'd eaten at our place multiple times, and the date spots were all purposefully super far away. To me, it sounded a little off. This was where I probably overstepped. I went on Instagram, searched her name, and voila. I found Kai's girlfriend, Grace, in a wedding dress with this guy, Mike, back in 2019. She's married. Yikes. I woke Kai up immediately. Yes. Cringe at my idiocy. I'm sorry. And spilled it all with receipts. It's 12 a.m. He's bleary-eyed with work at 7 a.m. tomorrow. I barged into his room wide-eyed and gesturing at the phone screen like a crazy person. It's all a mess. Finally, after I shut up, Kai gets mad, like fuming. He interrogates me about why I was getting all up in Grace's business. And then when I told him about the red flags, he just got even madder. The entire argument spiraled out of control. He told me I was way overstepping my boundaries, which I honestly was. But again, our proximity had us constantly keeping tabs on each other. I asked him why the hell he was mad at me for trying to look out for him, and it turned into a giant screaming match. Eventually, he took it to the next level and rambled on about how this was all probably because I was secretly into him and that he'd always thought our relationship had gotten closer than it needed to be, which is why I was stalking him. That's when I got really mad and said some awful things I wish I could take back. I dug at him for his situation with Marie, said I'd never date him for a $1 million, and then it devolved into him calling me some nasty names. I just had to walk out. It was nasty. We were both exhausted and aggravated. It all just blew into a 1,000 pieces in the span of one night. He woke me up early the next morning before he left. I thought the night had given us time to cool our heads and that he'd come to apologize, but instead, he decided to drop the news on me plainly, something he admitted he had been carrying on his shoulders for a while. He knew. He had known Grace was married since nearly day one, but he had shrugged it off. Her husband was a nice man, but Grace told Kai that she just couldn't feel for him anymore. And that explained why the gas bill for all those far-off dates didn't faze him, I guess. I'll admit, I wasn't too happy to hear this. I asked him how he would feel if Marie's hookups had known she was married and still went for her, to which Kai got mad all over again and told me not to bring Marie into this. We argued again, not as explosive as the night before, but still pretty heated, where Kai told me that he had avoided telling me all this time because he knew I'd make a big deal out of it. I told him that infidelity was obviously personal to me, and I honestly expected it to be for him too, to which he just straight up said it wasn't and that being roommates with me was as exhausting as a full-time relationship, that I had no control over who he dated. So I was like, yeah, fine. Date whoever you want. I just thought you needed to know that you were helping her cheat. I didn't mean for this to blow out of proportion. He said that was fine by him and just left for work. I wasn't Kai's mother or something where I needed to dictate his relationships. I just thought Kai should know that he was being the other man here. I know that if I were in a relationship with a man who was already married, I'd want someone to tell me, and based on my standards, I'd break it off with that man. But if Kai had different morals despite our shared experiences, that was fine too. I just didn't want to associate with someone who perpetuated cheating. I didn't really have to move out of guys. He was nice enough not to overtly kick me out and make me homeless, but things were definitely tough and distant between us for a while. And in all honesty, I had lost respect for him. Him continuing to seek Grace along with the idea he had that I was interested in him, it wasn't great. Finally, I was able to gather all my stuff and move out, at which point I moved in with a family friend. I was ultimately better off even though it was pretty dang far from where I worked. I guess I ought to provide an update on the man himself, my ex-husband. Well, pretty soon after we officially divorced, he got engaged to another woman. Around this time, right after I moved out, I think I just about hit rock bottom. The whole AI panic with student work started happening in my district, and I was beginning the process of moving out properly into my own place, all while trying to adjust to a new community where I didn't really know anyone. I was pretty lonely and down all the time. I went on a couple of dates, but they went quite mediocre. So I gave up in the end, which only cemented how lonely I was. Wouldn't go back to those days for the world. Then my ex-husband reached out to me. He told me about his engagement and all the good news. He said he was on some life improvement path and wanted to clean up his act, starting with giving me a proper apology. He offered to meet in person, locally, swearing up and down that this wasn't a date and that he wasn't expecting me to accept the apology. I should have been much more assertive, but I was totally beat down by life, and I felt like a completely different person in a sucky, no good way. So I agreed like an idiot. I thought maybe an apology rather than a loose end would help me feel better about things. It went just as well as you'd expect it to. It started out okay. We shared pleasantries and he actually did apologize for everything, but then he started pressing me about how my life was going. I tried not to give too many details, just saying the kids are fine, I'm doing fine, and whatever else was going on. But I guess I must have said one too many things because he quickly picked up on how miserable my life was. Then he had this Cheshire cat grin as he began boasting about his great new life, his hot girlfriend, her shiny engagement ring, and basically how everything was going great and amazing for him. He casually dropped that his life had been leagues better than ever and that our separation was a blessing disguised as a curse. Can't lie. It hurt to hear that the years I put in with him felt like burdens to him. At this point, he was most definitely rubbing it in, and eventually, I got fed up with hearing him talk and weaseled my way out of there. In the end, I never got invited to the wedding. So did we really make amends? Either way, I totally regretted doing all that. Total waste of my time, and it only dug me deeper into that depression pit. But alas, things eventually start looking up when you least expect it. After a long while of dragging myself through each day by the hair, I finally went on one more date. I'd lost a lot of weight and looked pretty sunken and pale, so I didn't think I'd make a great first impression. But what do you know? Fate can make things happen like magic. That's where I met my current partner, Chase, 29 meters, who is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. He's so patient, undeniably sweet, and so chatty and lively. Seriously, I'm used to being the loud and silly one in relationships, and I used to think I'd like a guy who'd offset my energy, smirk, and roll his eyes at my jokes, whatever. A lot of people seem to throw themselves into that cliché, but let me give you some sage advice. If you're a ray of sunshine, don't search for the aloof, tall, dark, and handsome Mr. Right. Please search for someone who matches your bright energy. It's so refreshing. I've been missing this all my life, thinking I wanted a straight-laced sucker. I've never felt more loved or so complete than I have with this big goofball. No more being op. No more one-sided conversations. No more of those half-hearted scoff laughs dudes do to seem cool. We make the silliest jokes, the most legendary memories, and it feels so indescribably alive. Our conversations are so strangely deep about the most oddball topics, and I've never felt bored around him. If I keep going on about him, I think my fingers will break from how much I'll type. Geez, Louise. But, anyway, there's a little more I have to cover. Told you it'd be a lot, so I'm just gonna get straight to it. It's late 2024, and the year started back up again. I'm head over heels for Chase. Everything's going just fine. I moved properly into my own place a little while before that, back closer to my job and whatnot, but I didn't start going back to my old gym until then. That's when I saw Kai again. He didn't notice me for a few days, but when he did, he immediately came up to me. He very cordially apologized, told me he'd been worried sick since I'd gone basically no contact with him. He said he'd said a lot of stupid things that he regretted, and if I ever wanted to be friends again, he was always open to it. And that was it. It's 2025 now. I have no clue if Kai is still with Grace, and Kai has no clue that I'm with Chase, but I still see him around at the gym. I haven't properly connected with him since his apology. Maybe I should, but honestly, this likely isn't the best way to describe it. But to me, Kai feels like a recurring character from the first movie who's making an abrupt appearance in the second or third movie. It's a weird feeling I'm probably making up, but I feel like I'm in a totally different chapter of my life now. What was Chase and everything happening so far beyond the events of my ex-husband, Marie, and every other part of that time period? Not Lotion Man, though. Lotion Man is simply timeless. Speaking of the legend himself, I actually got around to showing Chase a rendition of Lotion Man. I won't lie. I was shaking a little bit. But to top this all off with a nice little cherry for all you happy ending lovers, not only did he find Lotion Man absolutely hilarious with a full-on belly laugh, but it's also a bit of a running joke between us now. We've got Soap Man, Ketchup Man, Shaving Cream Man, Floor Dust Man. Basically, anything we can create little smiley guys with, we make them real. And they all have silly accents too. Lotion Man, the world is your oyster. And with that, that's basically it. So much more has happened in my life that I've excluded here just because it's not really relevant to what I've typed before. Seriously, a lot happens in a few years, but my God, vomiting all that info out into these verbose paragraphs has felt like therapy. Even if nobody reads this, I'll still feel the weight of the past lifted off my shoulders, even if just a bit. I guess the one lesson I've learned coming out of all of this and coming out of my 20s is that being unapologetically, you will always do wonders no matter what. Things change. Life moves. It'll always get better. If you shine too bright for the small box that is your life, then it's not your fault for being too radiant. You just need to get out of that damn box. I'll never apologize for being myself again. Edit. Oh, goodness. I forgot to edit. But, yes, I did contact Grace's husband way back after I left Cais. He blocked me immediately. So I contacted him again with more information and evidence, and he blocked me again. Not much came of it, so it must have slipped my mind. I figured I couldn't do much else after that because he put a lock on his Instagram account. I'm not sure if it was because of me, but either way, I gave him what I could.